Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1 p.m. and we are going to call the September 13th meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee to order. At this point in time, if I could have a motion to adopt today's agenda. Deputy Mayor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Is there any declarations of pecuniary interest on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, we will move right into item 3, the public meeting reports. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation on these applications. All recommendations that come out of this afternoon's meeting will be forwarded to the next regular council meeting on September the 26th. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make submissions on applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicant, interested parties, and staff. Everyone speaking today is requested to state their name for the public record, and in the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your comments to no more than 5 minutes. When the appropriate time comes, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to speak to any public meeting items on the agenda. At that point, please either unmute yourself and turn on your video, or come to the podium and press and speak the button to activate the microphone. 3.1 on today's agenda is Plan 2023-047, an application to amend the Township of Fenelon zoning bylaw 12-95 at Ranchers Road and Long Beach Road, Cameron, Flatto Development, Inc. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Planning Advisory Committee. Joel, do you want me to share my screen for the presentation?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Give me 1 second here. You have to bear with me here. I got a handful of screens open here. I just want to make sure I'm referring to the right items here. Okay, so should be seeing the slide. Yeah, so here we have a zoning bylaw amendment application for lands in the Township of Fenelon for Long Beach Road. Here are the subject lands shown on the screen. Here is a conceptual development plan for the application, which I will get into some details here. Just pulling up my notes again. Bear with me while I juggle these screens. Okay, thank you. So here we have an application to amend the Township of Fenelon zoning bylaw to permit the development of a 423 recreational dwelling unit development with an 18-hole golf course and associated uses. The 423 recreational dwelling units are proposed to be in the form of 84 rental dwelling units and 339 ownership dwelling units. It should be noted that the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan currently designates the subject area as rural, waterfront, and environmental protection areas. The zoning for the current, as it stands today, is agricultural, or A1, agricultural exception 1 zone, rural residential 3, and tourist commercial. The area itself is approximately 156 acres and is largely vacant. In support of this application, staff are in receipt of a number of technical studies, and it is important to note that these are still largely under review. This includes a planning rationale report, a hydrogeology assessment, a geotechnical report, environmental impact study, an agricultural impact assessment, a functional servicing report, a traffic impact study, a cultural heritage evaluation, and a stage 1 archaeological assessment. For the record, I would like to note that the report does describe a species at risk assessment. This is simply a clerical error, and a species at risk assessment was not included as part of this application package. There were also some concept plans and whatnot included here as well. This, from a planning policy perspective, staff note that these lands are designated rural under the official plan, as well as outside of its urban settlement area, and certainly not designated as prime agricultural. The provincial policy statement provides direction on supporting rural areas and states that healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas should be supported by promoting diversification of the economic base and employment opportunities through goods and services, including value-added products and the sustainable management or use of resources. The PPS further provides policy direction on the guidance for permitting uses in rural lands in municipalities, which does certainly contemplate resource-based recreational uses, including recreational dwellings, which is what this proposed development is being framed as. With regards to tourism, there's also certainly a strong tourism element to this application, considering the golf course and the related uses. The site, as far as servicing goes, is certainly a key policy area of both the PPS and the growth plan. The development is proposed to be serviced largely on private services, with drinking water being drawn in from Sturgeon Lake. And all this information is detailed in the technical reports. Given that there are natural heritage features on the site, an environmental impact study was completed, and the proposed rezoning would certainly look to highlight and delineate those environmental features. With regards to the growth plan also provides policy direction on economic opportunities in rural areas, as well as resource-based recreational uses on rural lands. The City of Kawartha Lake's official plan does, again, note that these lands are designated as rural, as well as waterfront and environmental protection. Largely, the residential component would be on the rural lands, with the small waterfront to contain the marina, which is shown on the bottom right hand side of the concept plan, and the natural heritage features would follow the delineation of the environmental protection zone. To further vet the natural heritage features, environmental implications, the studies related to those topics are well under review, and ultimately full conformity with the official plan, the growth plan, as well as the PPS would be determined once the technical studies are completed. To facilitate the development, the rezoning is proposed to be to tourist commercial, as well as environmental protection, to acknowledge the proposed uses. In consultation, public notice was issued to property owners within 500 meters of the subject site, as well as signage was placed on the site as well. At the time of report writing, 14 residents submitted comments in writing and or via phone call. I understand as of this morning, there's upwards of 30 additional that were sent to committee members. Largely concerns that we've received thus far pertain to traffic impacts, line of sight, existing infrastructure, namely roads, and servicing concerns with the development. This application was also circulated to agencies, including our engineering department and Alderville First Nation. Comments include that Alderville First Nation would like a bit more engagement on the application, especially with regards to the Stage 2 archaeological assessment that is recommended to be completed. Staff are respectfully asking that this application be referred back so that we can complete the review of the technical documents. Like I said, largely they are all currently under review, still being reviewed, and we would like the report to be referred back until we can address those comments as well as address outstanding ongoing concerns from the public. And that is the presentation for the report. I understand that the applicant is also here, so I hope I didn't want to cover too much of their ground either with regards to this application.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Committee, do you have any questions of Jonathan at this point? All right, seeing none, Does the applicant owner or the agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Indeed, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to you, to committee, and to members of the public who are here and online. My name is Matthew Corey. I'm a professional planner with the land use planning firm Malone Given Parsons, and we are the planner on behalf of Flato for this application. I would like to give a brief presentation to you and to the public this afternoon. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for having us, and we do appreciate being here and being able to continue a conversation with the community on this. I know members of council and committee will be aware of this, but some of the members of the public may not be aware that in August of 2021, we did have a public information session and a session with the community when we were first conceptualizing what could be done on these lands that are owned by Flato, and first presented at that time the notion of a golf course with a related resort slash other housing that could be provided on these lands. So following the initial outreach to the community, our team has been working for 2 years, in fact, to do a lot of background work, prepare a lot of the technical and analysis pieces that are required to even bring forward an application to the city, and we have now done so, obviously. So if we could go to the next slide, Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Derwitz, thank you for your presentation. I think you did an excellent job giving an overview. I'll try not to be repetitive. But yes, the parcels of land we're talking about are numbered here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are located north of Long Beach Road, east of Ranchers Road, obviously just a little ways away from the central area of Cameron, and certainly situated and surrounded by the Long Beach community to the south and to the east of us. Total area of the property is about 156 hectares, 157, and the current use of the land is vacant and some agricultural uses. If we go to the next slide, please. So I want to clarify something for committee and the public. There's a series of development applications that have to be applied for to develop anything of this nature. And the zoning amendment is the first of those applications. And the reason we've only submitted a zoning amendment at this time was to codify and look at the principle of development, and more importantly, to establish the areas that can be developed and the ones that cannot. And the ones that cannot are the ones that need to be protected for natural heritage feature protection. Just for everyone's clarity, the process is we would, if we needed to, we would amend the official plan, but we do not need to amend the official plan. The permitted uses that we have in the rural area and the rural designation are permitted in the city's official plan. So what we're seeking to do is now change the zoning from what it currently is today, which does not permit the uses that the official plan allows, to the tourist commercial zone with an exception that would allow the golf course and the related residential units, and also formally deal with the marina as well. That being said, we knew everyone would want to see a concept of where we were heading with this application. So this concept you see before you is just that. It's a development concept that is framing what will happen or could happen in the areas that are not being protected for the natural heritage system. It needs, I can't overemphasize it. All of the details of that application will be part of forthcoming additional development applications, especially for draft plan of condominium and the other more technical development applications where the final proposed uses, the proposed grading, all of the details that I think there's a lot of questions on right now that I've seen from the public comments we've seen to date, and I'm sure we'll hear today. A lot of those will be addressed through those forthcoming development applications. But as with anything, you can't put the cart before the horse. The principle of development needs to be established with the zoning to be established, so we know the framework we're working in to proceed with that much more detailed and extensive work that has to occur to move things forward. But that being said, the concept that is being anticipated to be permitted ultimately by the zoning is 423 recreational dwelling units. The overall development, as Mr. Derwitz noted quite well, is that it's a resource-based recreational use. The resource-based side of it is directly related to the marina and its refurbishment, as well as the creation of the golf course, both obviously in proximity to the lake. In and around that, and in the southern portion of this plan, you can see it in the orangey color on the south part, there are guest cabins permitted, 84 or seeking to be permitted, 84 rental recreation dwelling units. Those would be for a tourism attraction for people to come and stay on a short-term basis, and definitely associated with any of the resort functions that would be provided on this property, which is going to be centralized in that building that you see just at the northwest corner of the orange area, which would be the golf clubhouse and any other recreation facility and amenities that would be located in that building. What you see in the northern parts of the plan, the dark green are the proposed environmental protection areas that are based on the initial environmental existing conditions work and assessment that has been done by our team. Certainly, additional work will have to be done to finalize where those areas are and ensure that all aspects of environmental protection are met and compliance is achieved with the various legislations that require that. But outside of that area, in the lighter green, you can see what is proposed to be a world-class 18-hole golf course. I've had the privilege of working with Doug Carrick, who is one of the preeminent golf course designers and most celebrated golf course designers in Ontario. I personally like his golf courses as well to play on, but he's the one designing this course to try to make it something that is very much a destination for people to come here in and of its own accord, quite apart from any of the recreation facilities in the marina. And then interspersed are residential dwellings associated ultimately with the golf course. But to be clear, those residential dwellings are proposed to be for ownership and sale to anyone who wants to purchase them. There was some questions I noted in some of the public commentary about whether these would be 3-season homes. They are not proposed to be 3-season homes, just for clarity for everyone. They are seasonal dwellings and they're proposed to be so, but in our opinion, they're going to be seasonal by the nature of the amenities that they enjoy and why people would come here. In other words, I know lots of people in the community live here all year round, but especially with these homes being marketed ultimately as part of the golf course and others, it's not to say people couldn't be here all year round and that they wouldn't choose to stay here during the winter, but it's definitely anticipated that there will be a seasonality to people coming here and staying here. And then the only last point I'll make, you can see, and this is important from this concept to note this, one of the primary access points is off Long Beach Road, which is on the south end there. It's generally to the west of where all the existing residents are. I know there are residents living on the south side of Long Beach Road. But you can see as well that there are 4 new access points proposed onto Ranchers Road. And those access points, in addition to the road network that's being proposed, ultimately, we think allows most of the people who will come here, and certainly the people who will reside here, to have their own access points and have circulation. And as part of the initial work we've done, we are aware and realize that we will have to do improvements to both Ranchers Road and Long Beach Road as part of any future more detailed development applications. Next slide, please. Just some clarity, there was some confusion in some of the comments we saw and some of the things we've heard initially on the proposed servicing. We just wanted to clarify for everyone, and it may answer some of the questions that come up today. Servicing is, as Mr. Derwitz noted, proposed on fully privately owned communal wastewater and drinking water systems. This is not an open system on the wastewater. I think there's some concern about that, about there being lagoons or something of that nature. It's a sequential batch reactor plant that's being proposed. This is the typical kind of servicing plant that would be a municipality would install for any form of service development on the wastewater side. And drinking water will be obtained from Sturgeon Lake, but treated on an on-site treatment facility for the residents in this area. As I said, sewage will be treated. I should also mention, and it's noted on the third bullet here, any sewage plant that we are proposing has to go through an MECP, that's the ministry process for any approved effluent criteria. So what that means is there's a whole assessment and analysis that goes on with the city, with the ministry, to ensure anything we're proposing will meet all effluent standards, and that any discharge, whether it be to the roughs of the green, which is one element that can happen, or ultimately to the storm ponds and out to the lake, will have to meet those standards, which are generally close to or at drinking water standards. And then, yes, there is a proposal to potentially reuse some of the fully treated effluent to satisfy some of the irrigation demand on the golf course, which is a very good sustainable practice, as opposed to drawing water solely from and using it from the lake or another water source all the time. The reuse of water is a very energy efficient and a good sustainable practice if it can be accomplished on a golf course. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, Mr. Derwitz covered this. The majority of the site is designated as rural in your official plan. You can see some of it down to in the pink. It's got that waterfront, that designation, which the marina is in, and some the eastern parts of the site. There are some very limited environmental protection, I'll call it the water courses, that are identified in the official plan. But even based on our initial review, there's much more environmental features and a much more extensive area that is required for environmental protection. And that's why our zoning amendment is seeking to designate those areas as such. And next slide, please. This is just a quick snapshot of the work that has been done to date on the natural heritage system by Beacon Environmental. This identifies the preliminary and the existing conditions and the identification of features that are on the site. There's a whole series of bullet points here that give a summary of that. One thing I think that's very important to note, there are certain aspects of the environmental work that cannot be completed at this time and will be completed ultimately through the proposed future development applications. And there's a very simple reason for that. Some elements of the environmental work require proposed mitigation measures and also assessment of what the final proposed location of development is, and we are not at that place yet. So that work will have to occur to be fully demonstrate that we're in conformity with full environmental protection. We understand that. I want to make that clear to the public and everyone listening today. That is work that we have to continue and undertake through the future development applications. Then next slide, please. Oh, and there was one thing on the last slide. Don't go back to it, but I did neglect to mention that approximately 25% at least of the property is being identified for and has to be protected for environmental protection in the proposal that we're doing. In terms of the Fenland zoning bylaw, this is the reason we're here today, to get comment. Currently, the site is zoned agricultural 1 with an exemption. And we are seeking to have it generally zoned for tourism, commercial with exemptions, and environmental protection. And that reflects the implementation of the permitted uses in the official plan and obviously aligns with the anticipated areas we can develop for this proposal and ultimately the uses that we would like to see being permitted for the forthcoming development applications. So again, a zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit the uses anticipated by the official plan, but there is no official plan amendment required. And just for everyone's benefit, that is what we're here to consult on today. That's what we're here to hear from the public on and everyone else on, is the nature of that rezoning and whether both the permitted use and the zone change is appropriate, as well as the uses that would be permitted in that zoning are appropriate and should be permitted. And I want to clarify that because I know, especially in my experience as a planner, the planning system is quite lengthy and complicated, and a lot of the public struggles, and unfairly so for them, to understand the steps in that process and where we're at any given time. And the first thing that comes first is the zoning permission, then you go through all the detailed heavy work of doing the development proposal. Next slide, please. So our proposed zoning amendment is shown here. I don't think Mr. Derwitz actually ended up showing the proposed zoning map. That is shown here on the left side of the screen. You can see in the big hatching, which is on the southeast corner, that is rezoned from to tourist commercial with one exception. There is let's call it gray, light polka dot color, which is the rezone to commercial exception, tourist commercial, another exception, and there's two other exception zones as well. Each of those has a purpose, and the reason they're all proposed is outlined on these bullet points. So the tourist commercial exception A is with regards to permitting the golf course specifically and the associated uses on the golf course in those lands. And you can see that generally coincides with the golf course on the conceptual plan. Tourist commercial exception B is for the rental recreation dwellings. They have slightly different zoning requirements to permit those types of units. So that is focused on the area in the south where we're proposing to do those rental units in association with the golf course and resort. Tourist commercial exception C is the ownership recreation dwellings, and that is the larger polka dotted uses you see at the northern portion of the site. That's where the ownership homes would be provided in accordance, in conjunction with the golf course use. And tourist commercial zone exception D is focused on the marina itself. I think committee will be aware, and I think the public are aware, that Flato is undertaking efforts to refurbish and upgrade the marina. One of the things we're very eager to hear today while we're here, and we are here to listen to everything that the public has to say, is what other community uses may be of benefit, or what are the desire from the community to have of us as we come in as a new neighbor into this area. Very cognizant of the fact that there's a vibrant Long Beach community that exists today. And Flato's intention is absolutely to integrate into that, and to the extent we can provide community benefits to the community. One of the things that is already being committed is that the boat launch that is there at the marina will be made available to all residents, the Long Beach residents, as they continue forward, and would very much like to hear any other community interests or benefits from everybody that's here today or after this public meeting as well. And then the last point here is on the environmental protection. That is the bulk of what is in the southwest corner, and then throughout the plan, those correspond to the these are the different permitted zone standards. Suffice to say that each one is being proposed to permit the different forms of development. And in particular, obviously, most of the standards pertain to either the rental dwellings or cottages, as well as the ownership dwellings or homes. And those are the zone standards that are being proposed. We believe those zone standards are appropriate and typical for what you'd see in this form of development, and they're also up for review. The marina zone is largely codifying the existing zoning standards in addition to slight modifications to account for what is being proposed and ultimately built on the marina site. So that's largely what exists today, with some slight modifications to allow for the refurbishment. Next slide, please. So with that, Mr. Chair, we are absolutely here to listen, to hear comments from the public. Our whole team is here, I should mention as well. And if there are some comments of a technical nature, we have our entire team here to try to answer them. But by all means, if there's any comments or questions from anyone that we can't answer or we run out of time today, we will absolutely be recording all of them. We will give a response back to the municipality for dissemination to everyone. And we're also very interested in meeting as many people as we can today and continuing conversations with them as we go forward considering this development application. So with that, Mr. Chair, I thank you for the time. I thank you for the opportunity to present this, and we're here to listen.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Committee, any questions of the applicant at this time? Mayor Elmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I'm just curious on the water treatment plant and the wastewater plant. Who do you envision running it, or is it too premature to talk about that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, that is, it's anticipated that it would be privately run and operated. So there would be a condo corporation that would be formed that would comprise and have a common element for all of these uses that are being proposed, and they would share in the upkeep and maintenance of both facilities.
Thank you. Follow up if I can. I'm just concerned, do you know of other locations in Ontario that are privately run water and wastewater treatments?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, to Your Worship, I'm aware Ballantrae is the one that sticks out to mind most foremost in terms of wastewater treatment. That is a privately run one by a condominium corporation. We do have members of our team here. I'm not off the top of my head familiar with many others that I can name, but I know that they are there. And we did, our team did review a number of those in terms of looking at what we propose here and have something very similar.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, I'm looking at your map and it says sanitary treatment plant, and there's EP lands and wetlands all around the whole development. So I'm concerned with that. And also, I was just wondering, the cottage area, is that going to be 3-season? Or are they 4-season?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Councillor. The environmental protection is throughout the plan area because that's just where the features are that are going to be protected, and or mitigation areas where we're going to add features as opposed to some that would be removed that are less significant, but then replicate their function. In terms of the seasonality, all of the dwellings here could be occupied all year round, but by their nature, we don't expect that to be the case. A similar analogy is when cottages are proposed or permitted, because of the nature of them, people can stay there all year round, but a lot of people don't do that. Mm-hmm. It's a very similar outlook that we have in terms of what we think, how people will work with this and behave with it. It's seasonal by its nature, not least of which because there needs to be other amenities, typically, especially ones for children, that would need to be there on a full-time basis for people to stay here all year round. They can, and certainly there would be an intention to have a 4 seasons approach to the recreation side and the resort side. But I've done a number of these resort kind of planning proposals, and there always is a seasonality. Even in Florida, for instance, there's instances where people leave during the hottest months there instead and come up here or in other places in the cooler months. There is a seasonality to it because there's a limit to what you can do as a settlement area, but not being in a settlement area.
Further, so I'm thinking, I see down at the bottom of this map that we've got today that there are potential environmental compensation lands, if it's viewed as a problem, I guess. The other question is, it's a golf course, and so how are you going to mitigate fertilizer and pesticide and that for the whole area and going into the water?
And those are great
groundwater.
Those are great questions, Councillor. The potential environmental mitigation areas are areas that are otherwise not required to be protected for natural features, but they're areas that through their addition would greatly enhance the ecological function. So they're areas that, to be blunt as well, they're very difficult to be developed themselves, so they're being proposed to be added in as compensation. In terms of the golf course, there is a whole series of studies and reports that ultimately have to be submitted, including nutrient management, pest management plans. All of those have to be prepared and submitted once the form of the golf course is finalized and proposed. And that's why I was clarifying earlier that there's additional development applications that will come after this. Because even if the zoning is established sometime in the future after this public meeting and this is approved, we still have to go through all the requirements through those other development applications to demonstrate the golf course can be delivered properly and in compliance with all of the different pieces of legislation, especially the ones that prohibit us from dumping pollutants into the lake, especially the ones that prevent excessive fertilizer or pesticides being used. All those things will have to be undertaken.
And so there are farms in the area too, and with traffic and whatever. Have you reached out to the agricultural community, the farms around this development?
I don't believe there's been extensive outreach. It's partly why we're here today, to start some of those conversations and to hear from all of our neighbors, but absolutely happy to take that back and purposefully reach out to them as well, Councillor.
Any further questions from committee on the applicant? Deputy Mayor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I was actually just going to ask somebody's speakers on. You're good now? Okay. I know I was just actually going to ask about that agricultural component, saying that dialogue needs to happen. Also for me, I mean, this is regarding zoning permissions and looking to make that commercial zoning for this entire project. When you look at this entire project, it is a big business plan. So when we're talking about seasonal rentals, but they're being built to be for season, I think my concern is how do you operationally only have this operating a couple months of the year? So to me, that's where I'm having a hard time grasping the concept.
And through you, Mr. Chair, it's still it's a challenge for sure when you have seasonality, how, especially from a commercial side or resort side, how you maintain that use. That'll ultimately depend on the final form of what's being proposed. And what I mean by that is specifically what amenities are in the clubhouse and the resort, as well as if any use of the golf course can be made of it during the winter for cross country or whatever kind of activities may be winter based. But certainly, I think the main amenity space and an anticipated gathering place for the whole community, not just the new residents, but even the existing residents, will be the marina with a refurbished restaurant and potentially some commercial use in there as well. We're very open to discussions and ideas on what the final composition of those things are. And certainly with the determination of what the final composition is, it's at that point we're going to have a better feel for how it would be rendered seasonal. Whether some parts of it would cease to function during the winter months, for instance, as opposed to being maintained all year round. But in terms of the servicing, which is, I think, typically a concern, it would be operated and maintained year round, like the water and wastewater servicing, if that was your question, Councillor. Yeah.
Member O'Reilly?
Thank you very much. Just to add to Mayor Elmsley's question about the condominium, out on County Road 18, the Cardinal Golf Course, they went to the Ontario Municipal Board and they were actually going to put a condominium in out there at the golf course. They were approved for up to 100 units, something similar to Huntsville, Deerhurst. So they were, it was one of the they were planning on doing. And around the golf courses on close to the water, like we got Egan Ridge, Sturgeon Point, Lindsay's golf course was built a number of years ago, and just a few years ago, and a lot of them are built close to water. But with the new nutrient management and the new environmental rules, I think are getting more stringent all the time. So around the fertilizer and that, so I think they have to, as mentioned by the speaker, they have to be up to standard. Yeah.
Member Willick?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a question. So the intention right now is this is going to be registered as a condominium corporation for all the ownerships?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Councillor Willick, that's correct. It's intended to be registered as a common element condominium for all owners, but certainly the yellow lots that you see there would be for private purchase. They would be freehold in nature, other than the fact that they would be bound by a common element condominium, as every use would be here, to pay for their portion and contribute to the maintenance of the proposed servicing.
Okay. Further, if I may. So the condominiums will be year-round, but the intention right now is the rental cottages could be seasonal operational only.
No, sorry, to clarify through you, Mr. Chair, the intent is that the whole, the rental cottages, all of the uses could be all year round or used all year round, because there's a hope that there could be some winter activity. I just think it's not, in my experience with any resort of this nature, and this kind of use, it never pans out fully that way. People just don't stick around all year round, especially if it's a second home, especially if they have kids elsewhere that have to go to school. All those things come into play, and there just ends up being an inherent seasonality to it by the nature of where it is and what's available in the area.
Okay. One more question, if I may. You said that 25% of it was going to be environmentally protected, so it's 25% of 387 acres. Any idea how much is considered golf course lands outside of that EP land?
That is an excellent question. I don't know that I have that stat handy, but I can certainly get back to you on it. It looks, just visually, I mean, it's approximately another 20% or so. That's just approximately how much it takes to deliver the golf course itself.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Warren?
Just a comment, there's more environmental awareness these days than there were years ago when we were building things close to the water. So, and we do have Kingsview in Kawartha Lakes. It's a condo development, I think it was like 2004, and the city was supposed to, anyway, I don't want to get into it, but it's a bit messy, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Any further questions from committee at this time? Okay, seeing none. I think how we're going to handle it, because of the number of people that are in chambers and the number of people that are online, is I'm going to start to call on the people joining us from Zoom to ask their questions first. And then I'll go to the individuals in council chambers, and just so everybody knows, if you've got questions or comments, and we'll go through that. I'm not going to ask the planning staff to respond to everybody individually. They'll have an opportunity once everybody has had a chance to speak to answer those questions and comment on everything that was said here today. I also just want to make a point of letting everybody know that it's been made the comments been made a couple times through the presentations, that there's well over 50 pieces of correspondence that have been received before today and this morning, and shortly after lunch. I just want to assure everybody that all the committee members have those correspondence. All those correspondence have been forwarded. The city planners have them, as well as the Flato Development Group. So anybody that submitted correspondence, they are part of the public record. So at this time, I've got on my list here, is there a Neil Arbor online that would like to speak?
Yes, I'd just like to speak in favor. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead, Mr. Arbor.
Sorry. I did submit my correspondence, and I'd just like to speak on behalf of the development. I'm in agreement of it. It's the developer has put some thought into it. I think it's good for the community. It's going to attract professionals that we need here, especially doctors and whatnot. They want a lifestyle. They want a lifestyle to come to, and I think that's an important factor that people got to realize. They want to come and have golf courses. They want to come and have a recreational style, and we need attraction here. We also got to keep with the this land is not being utilized, and they're going to develop vacant land with the protecting of the environment. So I just want to basically say that I'm for it, and my correspondence is there.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Arbor. Next on my list here, and I'm going to apologize now if I mispronounce anybody's names. Is there Rochelle Hartz online who wishes to speak to the application? Okay, moving along, Scott Cressman. Is there Scott Cressman online wishing to speak to the application? We can see you, Mr. Cressman.
Yes,
Go
I can.
ahead.
You can hear me? Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Cressman, and I'm one of the owners of 501 Long Beach Road. It should be noted that my comments today are supported by other owners at 485, 487, 491, 495, 497, 501, 503, 505, 507, 509, and 511 Long Beach Road. We are speaking today not in opposition of the development, but rather the need to address some major road concerns before the zoning bylaw amendments should be granted. We collectively have three main concerns to address. First, the traffic impact study is not thorough enough. Second, the current road infrastructure along Long Beach Road is not sufficient to handle the increased traffic. And three, the new Condo Municipal Road, which for this presentation I'll call the Road 10 extension, that connects the golf course to Long Beach Road at the water, should be moved to another location. First and foremost, the traffic impact study does not consider traffic along the Street 10 extension from the golf course to Long Beach Road. It only considers Street A and Street 9 intersections. If this is to be a road used to service the golf course and the rental recreational dwellings, and it connects to Long Beach Road, why is it not in the study? The city should ensure that all the plans, reports, and information are updated to reflect the concept plan. With the proposed 84 rental recreational dwellings and 337 ownership recreational dwellings, it should be assumed that traffic will be higher in the summer than in the winter. The study makes no comment on traffic patterns over these two very different times of the year. Again, the city should recommend this also be added to a new traffic impact study. There are 42 properties along Long Beach Road that have the road between them and the waterfront. And on a typical summer weekend, Long Beach Road is already very dangerous. Kids and adults are excited to cross the road to get to the lake. And with a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit and many drivers driving faster than that, it can be a very dangerous road for anyone walking their dog or riding a bike, as there are no sidewalks. We strongly suggest A, to lower the speed limit along Long Beach Road, B, consider dead-ending Long Beach Road either at the marina or at Rodman Drive to cancel this through traffic, or C, the city should install speed bumps either permanently or seasonally in the summer. And now is the time for the city to be considering this, not after the proposed subdivision is built. While speaking on the road topic, we would like to move on to our second point, that these roads were not built for today's traffic or the increased traffic of the future. Specifically, there are several points along Long Beach Road in which there's only 1 or 2 feet of grass between the asphalt of the road and the shoreline. And I've provided sample photos in the slide deck that hopefully was handed out. The shoreline has been eroding for decades, and the electrical poles are also extremely close to the road. At all points on Long Beach Road, one mistake by a driver could lead a car leaving the water and crashing into the lake or hitting one of these utility poles. And we want to know who's going to be responsible for the roads over the long term. The traffic impact study and the impact on these intersections does not look at the infrastructure. The residents feel this is something else that needs to be studied before we drastically add more traffic to this road. The last point that we would like the city to consider is why you would want to create a second access point along this unused road allowance. Again, I call that the Road 10 extension. This road will cut between two cottages, 503 and 505 Long Beach Road, and then would add another intersection along this already busy road. Why would we support cutting down trees on this unopened road allowance and displacing animals from their habitat? Also, the traffic impact study does not provide justification for multiple entrances to the golf course. As a result, is this second entrance unnecessary? If a second entrance is required, we see two options that make way more sense. And again, I've provided a general outline on some slides that I presented. First and foremost, the planned ownership recreational dwelling neighborhood should have direct access to the golf course to prevent traffic from leading to Long Beach Road and disrupting all the homeowners there. Secondly, there's already a perfectly great existing municipal road, Rodman Drive, that this subdivision is all around. So I don't know why we wouldn't consider that for a second entrance. So last, on the proposed drawings, this road 10 extension will cross environmental lands and or wetlands. So should another direction be considered, if this road is allowed to cross environmental lands or wetlands, strong consideration should be given to diverting the second access point, as mentioned previously, to a more suitable point. Last, it is not clear what type of road this will be and who will own it and who will maintain it. Last, if no other location is acceptable, this proposed road 10 extension would be a private development on a public road allowance. The opening of this road allowance should involve more consultation with the neighboring residents. In summary, it's clear that both the proposed subdivision, golf course, and supporting studies are incomplete, leaving many questions for the residents and the city. The city should recommend further due diligence on all the points made in this presentation. Last, the city should add a condition to the site plan approval or draft plan of subdivision to require Flato to host additional public meetings to receive and address feedback from the community on the details of this development. Thank you very much for everyone's time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Cressman. Is there a Sylvia Keesmaat online? Sylvia? Yep, we can see you. Go ahead, Sylvia.
My name is Sylvia Keesmaat. I'm a resident of Cameron, deeply familiar with the land that's under consideration. I had hoped to attend in person today, but have tested positive for COVID. Members of the Planning Advisory Board, city planners, and fellow citizens of the city of Kawartha Lakes, I'm writing with regard to the plans that are under discussion right now. When this proposal comes before council, we will be presenting a petition opposing the rezoning of this land, with over 250 signatures on it from residents in the area, a significant proportion of the current population. I represent those signatories. Those who have signed this petition have not done so because they're opposed to any and all building on in this area, or because they don't want to welcome newcomers to our beautiful city. Rather, some have signed this petition because they are concerned about the health of Sturgeon Lake and the water table. They know that the proposal to treat wastewater and use it to irrigate the proposed golf course will cause water to flow over the limestone and bedrock that lie so close to the surface of this land, carrying pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizer from the golf course into the lake and into their wells. No matter how existing residents draw their drinking water, it will no longer be healthy. They have read the reports that show that golf courses in Ontario have not, in fact, reduced pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide use in spite of what the industry says. And they are aware of the increased cancer levels of those who live near to golf courses. Some have signed this petition because they're familiar with the at-risk species that are scattered over the area of the proposed development. They know that more than 12 birds from the Species at Risk Act can be found on this property. They include endangered birds, threatened birds, and some species of concern. The portions of protected land throughout the property will be too close to dwellings and roads to be able to support these endangered and threatened species which currently inhabit the entire uninterrupted site. Some have signed this petition because they have infrastructure concerns related to traffic in the area or the impact of this development on our hospital emergency room and other stretch city services. Some have signed this petition because of their concerns regarding the increased amount of both boat traffic and the environmental pollution that such traffic will inflict on the lake. Some have signed this petition because they have followed the impact that increased tourism has had on small communities. Rising house prices mean that children who grow up here and those who grow old here are no longer able to find affordable housing in their home communities. The displacement of permanent residents with seasonal residents means that businesses struggle to remain open year-round, schools lose their student base, and it's difficult to find jobs that are not seasonal and low-paying. Some have signed this petition because of the questions raised by the recreational seasonal homes that the proposal suggests. They are aware that a private water treatment plant and water filtration system is not permitted in the city of Kawartha Lakes unless the homes are designated seasonal. The most concerning questions, therefore, are A, what will ensure these homes are indeed seasonal, and B, what will prevent these recreational residences from being used as short-term rentals, creating enormous noise, garbage, and traffic problems for permanent residents. Some are aware that Flato owns land adjacent to the proposed development, extending all the way to Highway 121. They are wondering whether this is the first step on a much larger development. They would like to see plans for the entire area that Flato owns before approvals move forward on this development. Some have signed this petition, lastly, because they are part of the Long Beach Residents Association, and they don't understand how the former government dock that was owned by the Long Beach Residents Association is now owned by Flato. No meeting was ever held to approve this sale. The concerns of those who signed this petition are my concerns. These are deeply thought out, well-informed, and wise questions raised by people who know the lake, the land, and the community well. I therefore urge the Planning Advisory Committee to urge Council to delay this rezoning until they have done the following. 1, commission an independent environmental assessment to determine the effect on both the land, species at risk, and the lake of this development, including the environmental and health risks associated with runoff from the golf course. 2, undertake an infrastructure assessment to determine the impact of this development on roads, the hospital emergency room, and other city services. 3, get further clarification in writing from Flato regarding how these residences are considered seasonal if people can stay year-round. How will these, in fact, be seasonal residences? 4th, undertake a study of the impact of short-term rentals on the community, this community. 5, ask Flato for disclosure regarding proposed use for adjacent lands. And lastly, 6, engage in long-term planning about the shape of development and tourism in Cameron and nearby Fenelon Falls, with particular attention to affordable housing, economically stable and well-paying jobs, access to local farmland and food, and environmental conservation. This proposal from Flato could then be assessed in terms of that long-term plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions and comments, Ms. Keesmaat. Is there anyone else online wishing to speak to the application this afternoon? Anyone else online wishing to speak to the application? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'm going to move to the ladies and gentlemen that are present at City Hall this afternoon. So I would ask if there's anybody present wishing to speak or ask questions that haven't already been mentioned, if you would like to come forward at this time. I'll remind you just to state your name just for the record, and that you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name's Joanne Jones, and I live at 246 Ranchers Road. I live on the last farm on the east side of Ranchers Road, and the developer owns the neighboring farms and vacant land on my road on the north and southeast side. I did have former Mayor Andy Leatham, now a consultant for the developer and a real estate agent, visit me one afternoon, but I am not interested in selling. I like my farm, and I'm 10 minutes from work. I have lost my farming community, I've lost my neighbors, and I would like to see these farms sold back to farmers who would like to take care of them. Ontario has lost enough farmland as documented by the OFA. So I'm north of this current development plan. I'll be greatly impacted by the loss of my community and the traffic on the road. This is a very quiet area. Thousands of construction vehicles on the road will impact me. Extra traffic from the tourist facility will interfere with my farming activities and create road damage. Now, I don't know if you've been there or not, but I urge you to drive out there. Ranchers Road is like this. And every hill, the highest hill, will be where the new road is proposed on Lot 2. It's very hilly dirt road, and Long Beach is a very narrow road. And I'm repeating some of the other things that other people have said. But I'm asking for an independent road evaluation study for traffic, both construction and tourism on our ranchers in Long Beach. In particular, I would like the study to include speed limits to be reduced and posted. Currently on ranchers, we have no speed limit posted. So, and I'm also right in the middle of the next stretch of development, slated. The road, the farm above this one, the last portion in green where the rail trail goes through. Then there's me, and then there's 2 farms on 121 and ranchers that have been bought. So I'm asking the committee to delay rezoning application until all other aspects of this proposed development can be vested more thoroughly. The zoning change feels like it's being pushed through too fast. As the developer has stated, most of their studies aren't even finished yet. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know what the answers are going to be. And there's lots of concerns by the residents. So in Ranchers Road Lot 2, this particular lot, even though it's empty right now, used to be a farm, used to have a farm on it. This is called a drumlin with an alvar on it. It's the highest hill on Ranchers Road. Usually made out of hard bedrock granite limestone. This drains, cleans our water to Sturgeon Lake. It has a unique rare vegetation of plants and shrubs that grow here, similar to the Carden alvar, if you're familiar with that. This area is home to many bird species at risk, and in particular migratory birds. The migratory birds pass through every spring, and some of them stop to nest there. It is home to many other species at risk as well. So if this project goes through, they will have to blast the bedrock in order to put in drains. I don't know how that is even going to work. How are you going to put in the drains, the hydro, the roads? Everything on that is subject to serious construction. So I would like to have an independent scientific study on this area to map the geology, the drumlin, the alvar, the water draw impacts on the lake, water impacts from the sewage treatment facility, plus a scientific study on the unique plant life and animal habitat for species at risk on the alvar. Now, the initial meeting with the developer said 100 mansions has now changed to 432 plus season rental properties. Will this be the last plan? Is this the last plan? Is it going to be changed? We don't know if they're going to add, take away, increase the size of the homes, decrease the homes. And to me, they're going to be Airbnb properties, which has a big impact on the community. So with this, if the increase of homes is the capacity of the water treatment and sewage plant going to be enough? Is that going to have to be increased as well? What would that look like? Where would that come from? So I'm asking for an independent study on the water treatment facility, which would include data for heavy snow melt, rainstorms, which would cause water overflow into the lake, a study that includes pollution from increased boat traffic, because it's going to be a big marina, there's going to be gas there, there's going to be all that gas, oil, many boats. So the water is drawn by the residents as well. They have water from the lake, they have wells, they have cisterns. What's going to happen to their draw? So I would like to have a benchmark of the residents' water systems prior to development in case something goes wrong. The last thing I'd like to mention is what the gentleman just said before. The Long Beach Residents Association had owned their government docks since 1999, and through a series of 2 transactions was removed from them in 2021 without their consent and knowledge. And I think we need to investigate what happened there. I think they'd like to have their dock back. They want to find out what happened. And I think the only way to do it is just to delay this zoning change in order for us to have more answers and peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Jones. Is there anyone else wishing to add anything else to go ahead?
Thank you. I'm going to introduce myself as who I really am. I am chief of the Kawartha First Nations. We own and still own all this property within Kawartha Lakes. It was never surrendered by my great-great-great-grandfather to the Crown in 1781. If most of you know, we built a teepee in the spring to notify the public of who we really are. We have land claims that are in the courts right now. We have land patents on the property I reside on. We have history that is going to be presented in court that this Kawartha Lakes the 3,000 square kilometers is sovereign land of Kawartha First Nations people. So you people have been carrying on our lands ever since you took it, stole it, killed all our people in 1783 when our ancestors would not surrender the land to the British. That's why you'll go anywhere in Kawartha Lakes and you'll find our ancestral burial grounds. You plow over them, just as recently as Tribute Homes did. Just plow right over them. The archaeological studies that have been done are a joke. They were done to get a permission to destroy our lakes, our lands, our rivers, and our wetlands. It stops now. We're not here to take back. We're here to cooperate and work with the people of Kawartha Lakes. But you're not going to destroy our lands, our lakes, our rivers, and our wetlands anymore without consolidation and cooperation from us. Plain and simple. And we have over, I should say, almost 100,000 First Nations people coming Thanksgiving weekend to the Kawartha Lakes from across Canada. We are tired of non-First Nations people telling us what we can't do and what you want to do with our land. It's just that simple. I appreciate your time. I'm more than willing to sit and talk to your owner, but it'll be in our teepee, and you're welcome to bring whoever you want. We've invited the council, I don't know how many times, to come meet and talk with us, and they think we're a joke. The joke is on you people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Denby. Is there anybody else wishing to add anything to today's?
Hi, my name is Brad Kampkin, and I forgot my reading glasses, so I'm going to be doing my best to follow my notes here. My wife Isabel and I moved to 25 Manor Road, which is just down from the marina, a few years ago. We're new to the area. And I'm here to speak about the Flato application, like everybody else, and the rezoning. First, I'd like to say that we're new to the area, and having moved from the Durham region into the Kawartha Lakes about 5 years ago, we moved here as we felt the Kawartha Lakes were perfect for retirement, but also saw it as an area that was growing with new businesses, new condos, new recreational properties like golf courses, pickleball courts, and marinas. Our experience with Flato is pretty limited. We were invited to a neighborhood information gathering that Flato hosted approximately 2 years ago. I think it was August of 21, when they first announced they were going to develop the property. We were pleased to see a great turnout of neighbors, both those for and those against, at that meeting. Flato did not have to have that meeting, and we felt it was very progressive of them to ask all of our neighbors what their concerns and feelings were towards the developments. They had their entire management team on site and were very accessible and welcomed all comments and heard the concerns that some local property owners had. Even though we are not investors or have any financial stake in the development, they still wanted to ask for input, and as they did today, are very open to that. They also, at that meeting, had independent experts. There's a third-party experts that are not working for Flato directly, but would be hired or paid by them to give an independent review on what's going to take place. There was a gentleman there who is an expert in endangered species, wildlife species. There was somebody else there to talk about fresh water and how that would be managed. Another person was there for wastewater management. And they spoke about traffic and road management. So our feelings were they did all the right things as far as bringing in experts. I know everybody has an opinion, and often opinions are just that. They're based on how you feel, but the ultimate results are going to be the hard facts of how this would affect the land and whatnot. And we've heard today that this is an early planning stage. They're looking to get the zoning first, and then the council and the committee would be involved in all the decisions going forward. They wouldn't be able to just go ahead and do what they want. So we felt with those experts and other experts that weren't there, we would get a proper management of all those concerns. We felt they didn't need to involve the community. It showed us that they are a type of developer that wants to involve both sides of the argument going forward. We would hope and expect Flato would continue to keep all of the neighbors up to date on what's taking place as they develop the property. Like I say, we're just about 7 doors down from the marina. And one thing we'd ask in going forward, if Flato could maybe organize a monthly newsletter and let everybody know what's happening. We find there's so many rumors, neighbors are always talking, but if there's a vacuum where there's no information, it gets filled by what everybody feels or thinks, but not necessarily the facts. We feel that would be a very positive impact going forward if we could have an information newsletter. It would also remove any fear, uncertainty, and doubt going forward. We feel the development will take place in our area. The development's going to take place. There'll be development throughout the Kawartha Lakes going forward. And having a developer like Flato that will involve the neighbors and also communicate with us and ask us what our needs are will be a positive impact on the area. Bringing tourism to the area, that's why we came. Kawartha Lakes is a tourism area, but also the fact that it would be a year-round facility as well for residents to live there would be great. I also, we've often commented how the Long Beach community does not have any park. There's no parkland. We can't take the kids to a park. There's nothing to do for the younger kids, or even you know, you want to go walking. There's the trail rail, which is there, but it's a little ways down. But there's no real park, and this would be a great opportunity for Flato to bring up a park-like setting that would be usable by the existing community as well as the new community. Some of the biggest concerns we have are freshwater, are the freshwater wells, wastewater management, and Sturgeon Lake, and how it'll be affected. I feel with what we heard today about experts and whatnot, it's going to make a huge difference how they communicate to us how they're going to do that. We'd ask that information on these subjects be shared on a regular basis so everyone knows the impact and how it may affect the locals. I believe we are part of the silent majority, Isabel and I, and as such, we wanted to be heard at this meeting and to ask that Flato continue to involve the community, both with regular information updates, maybe a monthly newsletter, and asking us how we can be involved in the improvements in our neighborhood. We feel this development will attract more people like us who want to enjoy the beauty of the Kawartha Lakes like we all want to enjoy it. I thank the committee for your time. I trust your decision will be for the benefit of all parties in the Kawartha Lakes in the hamlet of Cameron, Long Beach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Campkin. Is there anyone else wishing to add anything? You can. I think this lady here has been trying to get up for...
Well, it might not be what you want to say. Mine's about the fire department, the police department, and everything else. Closed units. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name's Rosemary McColeman. I live on Sturgeon Lake, and I've lived on Sturgeon Lake. I've lived on Sturgeon Lake for more than 40 years, so I have enjoyed the land and the lake. I'm here to express what I consider are my deep concerns regarding the proposed Flato development of lands adjacent to and west of Sturgeon Lake. I live on Lot 12, Concession 9. It doesn't quite show in the colored area on the map, but in that white rectangle to the right-hand top corner, that is where our property is. So very, very close in proximity. Most of the people, including my family, who have lived on the frontage of Sturgeon Lake, have to draw their water from the lake. as groundwater in this area rarely yields sufficient water flow for a functioning well. We tried that and could not, even going down 100 feet, tap into the water table. Thus, the lake is a critical water source for current, full-time, and part-time residents. Maintaining the water capacity and water quality are essential to our health and well-being and those others currently relying on this water source. Most runoff and excess water from surrounding areas find its way into Sturgeon Lake. Anybody who accesses the Long Beach Road along the lake during the spring can attest to that, because it comes over sometimes more than the road can handle. It always finds its way into Sturgeon Lake. As a result of the topography of the land and the soil composition and limestone bedrock, the water does not absorb well into the soil, but finds its way to the lake. Water leaching, water seepage from surrounding lands eventually also makes its way into the lake, including soil contaminants. The negative environmental impact from the proposed large-scale development will jeopardize this precious water source, and thus the well-being of the residents currently relying on the lake for their water supply. Lake water is not an infinite source of water. Low lake levels of late have been of great concern. An in-depth, independent environmental assessment should be carried out to ensure that there is a full and clear understanding of the impact that further development of the land surrounding Sturgeon Lake will have on the lake and those that rely on the lake as their water source. It would also be essential to carry out an in-depth assessment to verify that any large-scale development in this area would have sufficient and reliable water source other than the lake, and to assess the sustainability of any plan to be implemented. We've heard a comment about the cart before the horse, and I really do feel the details have to come first before decisions are made. I strongly encourage that caution, as opposed to haste, be the practice in assessing the impact of any potential land development will have for those currently relying on Sturgeon Lake as their main water source. Thank you for your careful consideration of these concerns.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. McColman. Is there anyone else wishing to add anything? Go ahead.
Would you like to go?
Go ahead. I got a big mouth. You'll hear me soon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, people, the public, and the staff and planners for the City of Kawartha Lakes. I'm an area farmer in the City of Kawartha Lakes, and I moved from Markham. I saw the total destruction of farmland, the disregard for the environment. Mr. Flato was also involved with those opportunities to make money. My farm was on the Rouge River. At the time of the Rouge River, and when I was a kid, and I'm not that old, I was able to fish in the Rouge River. We fished for chub, trout, salmon. These are all indicators of the environment and what the pollution levels are in the rivers, lakes, and so on. We farmed. We were environmentally friendly. As farmers, I am still an environmentally friendly person. My farm is at 540 County Road 36. And I've had the Conservation Authority do environmental studies on my drain lines, going across to the jail, and finally into the river. They have been environmentally friendly. All those reports have been not only put into the government, but they've been also put in my hand to take a look at before they went into the government. Getting back to Markham, everything was done with the environment and with Ontario, the Ontario government. We were in a position where a 14-foot diameter sewer was put down the Rouge River. It killed the fish. It killed the area. Annabelle Nurseries, which was a 50-acre nursery on McCowan Road, the levels of pollution were so high after the water was put back into the river that it killed all 50 acres of trees. This was all done by the environment. This was all done by the Ontario government. The wells were polluted in the area. The government came in and said, well, we'll go and drill more wells. I was part with my father fighting against the provincial government, and we demanded that this area be put back into a proper state where our wells were not causing cancer when we took showers. Okay? We were in a situation where the water was polluted that badly. Now, when you go down there now, it's all development. And I'm scared of this in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Because you know what? The council says, let's get started. Well, you know what? There's no end to it. The developers from Toronto come here like a magnet to make money. Because you know what? The congestion down there makes it so that they can't exist. They can't make their money. But they can make their money here. Now, I'm not against development, but I'm against the people, the local people, having jobs, the builders building on a private basis where they make their opportunity and their money for their families and opportunities for their next generations. I love my farm, and I want a farm. Mr. Flatto came to me and said, and most developers have come into my property and wanted me to sell. I'm one farmer that said no. I don't care how much money you give me. My farm is not for sale. I look at the 319 acres of land that is it's total disregard for the future and our future offspring. 319 acres per day disappear to development in Ontario. And this has got to stop, because you know what? It kills us. In the long term, it kills us. We have no future with no farms, no food, no future. I don't care what kind of environmental assessments are done, what kind of studies are done. I went through school as an engineer and took civil engineering. Then I realized, you know what? We're killing ourselves. We're designing sewers to pollute our rivers, streams, and lakes. We're designing, paved areas that blame the farmer for nitrate levels in the lakes. It has nothing to do with the farmer. It's been blamed on the farmer for years. And I was one of those farmers. They did studies down in Picton, and they found out that all this information is baloney. What it is the nitrate levels are so high in Picton is because people want that perfect lawn. Okay, when they go and they ask somebody to come in and spread fertilizer on their property, guess what? Half of it ends up on the pavement. That goes into the storm sewers, and into the lakes, into the rivers, streams. That's where the nitrate levels are. I saw the jail come to my property, okay, and asked to build. No. I said no. I watched the jail process. I was part of the jail process. My mother and father lived in Victoria Place, which is a resident, okay, a satellite resident on Pigeon Lake. At that time, there was 1,600 residents that lived in the jail. And from the affluent levels coming and going from that area, okay, into the lakes and rivers, Pigeon Lake has been destroyed. Okay, pretty soon you'll be able to walk right across that. And that's not from the area farmers putting fertilizer on. And that's not from anything other than the development in the area has destroyed this lake. You cannot keep this up. Okay? I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, I'm Pat Malay, live in Cameron in Southview Estates. Been there for 36 years and love every second of it. Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Riley. Okay, my question is, part of it's for facto. Is it going to be a closed community where they have fences around the houses and locked gates? You're going to have police department there to look after your properties, your fire departments, because we don't have enough for our own Kawartha Lakes. Our house was burned down before we get enough help. And we have to have volunteers because the city doesn't have enough money to pay for the people, for the police department or the fire department or for jails. And that's why there's so much drug use in the Victoria County and Kawartha Lakes. And we've got children. I've got great-great-grandchildren living with me because they can't afford something. Let's look after who we got now before we have thousands more come on us and taken what we have and what we've paid for 36 years or more. It's not fair to us. And it has to change because there's going to be a hell of a depression coming up. And if you don't know it, I do. I've lived through 3 of them so far. So I hope it's something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the application?
Hello, everybody. My name is Brett Chandler. I'm a resident of Lindsay, and I grew up in the city of Kawartha Lakes. And I plan on raising my 8-month-old daughter in city of Kawartha Lakes. Anyways, my family has a property that's on Ranchers Road, and we have recently learned that Flato privately bought 180 acres that has the same or is adjacent to our property from a family going through a divorce, and seems that somewhat exploited the family and their need to get out of their farm and disperse their assets. Anyways, we basically had an vision of developing our own land, not on the scale that they are. And it was just recently we applied to even get to this stage of development with the city of Kawartha Lakes, which we were firmly denied any pre-consultation by Nicholas Smith, a planner in development services here at the city. And I don't understand how this could even be considered when a local family who we've built houses in the area for 30 years, we would want to sever and build for our own family so we can have affordable housing here. I'm lucky to be in the housing market as it is. I'm 26 years old, and it's hard to do it not many kids my age can even own a home in the city of Kawartha Lakes. And many farmers I know, or people who own hundreds of acres, try and sever off 1 acre for their to build a nice dwelling for their kids and grandkids, and are completely denied that chance. So I just want to have comment on how a massive development like this can happen on a very sloped lot down to a lake when it doesn't really need to be developed. Someone commented that, you know, why it's not utilized. Well, why does it have to be utilized? There's plenty of other land in Ontario that it might be harder and might be not as profitable to build there for big companies, but I think it needs to be considered instead of a nice flat grassy land that basically filters water that's going down to the lake naturally. Anyways, I just thought I'd comment on that, and it just doesn't, I don't know where the baseline is. If you set a precedent that you could develop something like this, where does it end? Does the 180 acres that they privately bought for, in my opinion, under market value, where does it just get developed as well as they move their way down the road? It is owned from Ranchers Road, 2 farms, all the way to Long Beach Road on the other end towards 121. And it's just kind of scary for me as a parent, a new parent. I don't know how this is going to work. And yeah, anyways, I thought I'd just say my piece. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chandler. Dr. Petrosoniak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So I'm sort of unique because I'm here and I'm not part of the Ranchers Road community. I'm part of the city of Kawartha Lakes, but from different parts. And I don't think this is a good idea. And there's some concerns that I have as a physician. I know that the difficulties that we're having in attracting primary care physicians. Every new home built will just increase the shortage of primary care. Now, does that mean we don't have any new developments? But we've got piles of new developments. We've got everything north of Colborne up to Thunder Bridge. There are a lot of homes being built, and despite that, we're having still a shortage of primary care. We're having a shortage of help at the emergency department, a shortage at the hospital, and we're going to have a problem with our soft infrastructure, meaning healthcare, but it also means other recreational things, parkland, police services, education, and so forth. And this presentation was well done, but it was a bit seductive. It's telling us that we're going to have basically seasonal activity there, suggesting or minimizing the effects that it'll have, suggesting that it'll not be that there aren't going to be that many new people, but over time this will add more and more people to this area, which is fine in the appropriate areas. But I think the Planning Advisory Committee, the planners, need to do that appropriately and in the right way. So that's going to be a problem. The other thing I want to say is I keep hearing this thing about that it's vacant land. Well, it's not vacant land. Land is not vacant. It's agricultural land. It's being farmed or has been farmed. That's what we hear. We should not regard it as vacant land so that we can exploit it. Sometimes where we need to develop, but we have to be careful with that terminology of vacant land. I also want to highlight the problems with the environment that we've heard about from some of the people that live there. Certainly, I don't live there, but I would be concerned about the amount of water, the quantity of water. Also, I'm really concerned about the quality of water and the quality of water that'll be in the effluent going into the lake. And no matter how much you try to mitigate this, it's going to be difficult. I've done some golfing, and every golf course that I've been on, wherever there's a lagoon or whatever else, you see the pretty green effluent in the little lagoons or along the edges of the fairways. And I've not seen any pristine golf courses, or the golf course greens and fairways are pristine, but the evidence of bad water or the bad parts of the herbicides, pesticides, and phosphates from the fertilizer are all evident. So that's another problem. And I think the last point I want to make is, I think the elephant in the room. Vlado has been investigated or has been a subject of some of the parts that are related to the Greenbelt land swap. And the Auditor General has not found it favorable for Vlado and some of the other developers. The commissioner, the Integrity Commissioner, has questioned the credulity of Vlado's owner, and I think the RCMP is involved in investigation. I think that investigation has to happen first before any of this goes forward. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Petrosoniak. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the application? Is there anyone else wishing to add anything to the application? I'm going to ask a third and final time, anyone else wishing to speak to this application? Oh. Okay, so seeing and hearing none, would the applicant's agent wish to respond to any of the comments or questions made?
Mr. Chair, thank you, and thank you to all of you who spoke today. There's a lot of comments there. I've written down them all. Our team's taking notes. I don't know where I'd start with responding to all the comments, other than to say generally we've heard them all. We're taking them all back. We'll definitely consider all of them. If I just had some highlights here of some of my notes. Absolutely, the transportation elements we have to look at again, and we'll look at very closely with our transportation consultant, especially when we're talking about Long Beach Road and Ranchers Road and its function. Hear loud and clear, kids are here, that they need to be safe and that any development can't put them in further jeopardy. Also heard a lot about, I did remember my reading glasses, thank God, so I can read. The Sturgeon Lake and the water quality and the water table is a paramount concern, heard over and over. That's something we'll be looking at quite carefully with our team. The environmental impacts, we are studying and will continue to study, not least of which we'll have a very hard look and discuss with our golf course architect and our environmental consultants the various forms and nature of nutrient and pesticide control and management. I will say, generally speaking, when it comes to doing any development, one of the requirements we have to do ultimately is maintain pre and post water balance and flows. You can see what I did not discuss when I originally presented it, Mr. Chair, was there are some blue areas that are stormwater management ponds. That's what those are intended to be. Those are places where storm runoff and superficial flows are collected and detained and only released in an appropriate amount, and the same amount that's flowing right now off the property back into the lake, with treatment going on there in terms of stormwater, which follows the treatment that happens with the wastewater treatment. So there's a whole train of treatment that goes on. But very much here how important and how delicate people's well water can be in this area and is, and very much so that we have to take another look at that and look closely at it prior to any development. What else do I have here? Don't want to miss anything. Certainly, I think some of the comments in relation to the fact that there's no park and there's no recreation facilities that are, say, publicly available for residents of Long Beach is something that needs to be considered and looked at. It's something we're definitely willing to take back, and we'll take another look at that. Heard the comments loud and clear on police and fire, and the need, and including from the doctor, from the capacity for healthcare in the area. That's something as well that, in obviously consultation with the city, who provides those services, very willing to discuss things and look at that in terms of the capacity and how it would be and can be increased to make sure this is all serviced properly. And the only other one that springs to mind, and I apologize if I'm missing any major points, but we do have them all recorded here. is just the nature of proceeding and next steps. Definitely, and I want to clarify as well, the lands are used for agriculture and not just vacant. That's absolutely the case. And why here, I think? Why here is partly because of the access to the lake, and partly because in doing a resource-based application with these kinds of elements, without the marina, without the access to the lake, it doesn't work from a lot of perspectives of delivering something that has that integrative nature of that proposed development. That's why here as opposed to other places. And I think the last point of clarification that just leapt to my mind as well, and this is again to the doctor's point, absolutely, there will be an increase of people here. I mean, all these homes are intended to be occupied, and they will be occupied at any given time. And that's part of the planning process, is to do that assessment, both from a traffic and the seasonality of potentially that traffic and maybe other requirements, which happy to discuss again with the city for traffic calming during the summer months. We're open to all those discussions, including any improvements that have to happen to Long Beach and Ranchers Road themselves. Understanding the roads are of the nature that they are. I remember coming here in winter and driving through it, and I was really glad I had winter tires and other things, but all of those things have to be considered by us. So, I mean, that's not all of the comments. We did record all the comments, very happy to have them and very happy to continue conversations on them and try to work on them. And somebody forgot their reading glasses. Okay, was it yours? Yes, sir. I think, Mr. Chair, those are the responses I have in the moment, but we're definitely are going to continue this conversation.
Thank you very much. Committee, after considering all the comments provided today, what is your recommendation to council? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you very much. In the words of Dr. Petrozoniak in his letter, I'll move the recommendation as he suggested, that the Township of Fenton zoning bylaw for the vacant and agricultural land east of Ranchers Roads, Part Lot 9, 10, 11, Section 8, Geographic Township of Fenton Falls be received for information, and this report be referred back to staff for processing until the review of the public comments and the technical studies have been completed.
Seconder, Member Willick, any discussion? Member O'Reilly?
I'd just like to speak to it briefly. I just said it's great to have a turnout today because this is what public meetings is all about. The public get an opportunity to come here and speak and deliver their concerns, and we've heard many of them today. And it's great to have so many people come. I think the big challenge not only with this is that we're going through a term of unprecedented growth in our municipality. We probably got 15,000 building units in the hopper in the city of Kawartha Lakes. So not only is Flato here, we got a number of other companies. Bromont Homes are here, Fernbrook's Home Craft is here, Tribute Homes, all these people. And across from the airport, there's 4,000 homes going in there by itself. So I think in that sense, and we know, I think from a tourist perspective, there's obviously, we have the concerns that are raised with the environment and everything today, which are going to be flushed out with the studies coming forward. But with tourism, it's our second biggest industry. Agriculture and tourism are just our two top industries. So I think tourism is going to be very, very important to the future. And I think, with the new marina, and perhaps there's always a shortage of gas for the boaters on the lake. A lot of the marinas are closing, don't have gas anymore. On many of the lakes, I know, for those that travel. And so I think if they get gas as well and fix the marina up, certainly in a restaurant as well. So I think the concerns that the people have today are going to be addressed through the studies, which is said in the body of the report today, and listening to the consultant that was here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Is it appropriate just to ask a couple of questions to staff at this point?
Sure.
So it was brought up that there actually are species at risk. So I'm just wondering if that study would be going forward. And I know that Kawartha Conservation cannot do heritage. So will that be peer-reviewed by a company that we hire? And who would pay for that? any of those studies, would they be peer reviewed?
Director Hawley?
Through the chair to Member Warren, yes, all these studies are being peer reviewed. Some of them will be farmed out to WSP, who is our planning services consultant at this point in time, and we are negotiating with them for a peer review services contract for all environmental impact studies that cannot be reviewed, and just the portions of the studies that cannot be reviewed by the conservation authorities, given their more limited role based on provincial policy. The other studies that have been submitted as background, those studies that can't be reviewed by city departments will also be peer reviewed by third-party consultants. So for example, a traffic study will be peer reviewed by Burnside, for example.
So would the city be paying that or the developer?
Through the chair to the member, the developer will be paying for those peer reviews.
Any further discussion?
If I may, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Warren, the species at risk assessment, yeah, so that's a good point of clarification. While that was not submitted as its own standalone document, there was a species at risk assessment included within the environmental impact study.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. At this point in time, it's 2:45, so I think it is appropriate that we take a 10-minute break, and we will reconvene at 2:56. 1 minute. It's 2:56. We are now calling the meeting back to order. We still have a number of applications to get through this afternoon. Can we please have everybody back? Member O'Reilly. Okay, returning to today's agenda, we are moving along to item 3.2, Plan 2023-046, an application to amend the Township of Eldon zoning bylaw 94-14 at 1323 Kawartha Lakes Road 46, Lornville. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Alrighty, unmuted. Thank you, Chair. Thanks everyone for returning to your seats. I feel like I'm at the front of the class, the teacher waiting for his students to sit down. Anyway, here we have. I'll try and keep these ones brief. I know everyone's kind of eager to get out. I think these will be pretty straightforward. We have a zoning bylaw amendment for the Township of Eldon. The property in subject to the application is 1323 County Road 46. The purpose of this application is to rezone the property to acknowledge zoning deficiencies that will result as part of a future application to sever. The subject lands are approximately 1.25 hectares and serviced on private water and septic. Currently on the property is a single detached dwelling, one garage, and one shed. On the screen here, we're showing the green, which is the lands to be retained. Red is lands to be severed. Again, this would follow with a consent application in the future. Currently, the site is zoned agricultural exception 3, so that's A1-3 zone, and the applicant is proposing to rezone it to hamlet residential to basically allow, should the consent be approved, there would be no zoning deficiencies, i.e. setbacks or lot area or lot coverage. The site, as far as the official plan is concerned, is designated hamlet, which works because it's a settlement area and the hamlet residential zone would be the most appropriate to facilitate the rezoning. Submitted in support of this application was a planning rationale report prepared by EcoView Consulting Services. Included with that, inside the report, was also a groundwater capacity assessment memo, as that was something that was asked for from staff. The subject site is located within the settlement area of Lornville, and the growth plan, as well as the provincial policy statement, is generally supportive of growth and development in settlement areas, acknowledging efficient land use patterns and using existing infrastructure. The City of Kawartha Lakes official plan did require that staff can be satisfied that there is sufficient water supply available by the private well to service the proposed severed lot. The severed lot is configured to entertain a single detached dwelling. The groundwater capacity assessment memo that was provided does indicate that the proposed well can provide sufficient water to a proposed single detached dwelling on the lot to be severed. The rezoning, as described, would be from A1-3 zone to HR, Hamlet Residential Zone, under the Eldon zoning bylaw, and it would facilitate and acknowledge the rural residential uses. No public comments have been received on this file. Notice was placed on the site via signage, and notice was circulated to property owners within 500 meters of the subject site. Agency review comments include that the building department is okay, they have no concerns. Engineering has no concerns either pertaining to this development. So with that, staff feels that this does represent good planning, as it is in conformity with the growth plan and consistent with the PPS. And staff is respectfully, of course, recommending that the attached or accompanying bylaw be forwarded to council for approval. Any questions? Oh, and I believe the applicant is here as well to answer any questions specific to the development.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? Okay. Seeing none, does the applicant owner or the agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application? All right, I don't see anybody. We'll go, is there anybody from the public wishing to speak to the application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Seeing and hearing none. Committee, after considering all the comments, Councillor Warren. So motion from Councillor Warren that report plan 2023-045, former township of I'm on the wrong one. The report plan 2023-046, Township of Eldon zoning bylaw amendment for 1323 County Road 46 be received, that a zoning bylaw respecting application D06-2023-016 substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to report plan 2023-046 be approved for adoption by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application. Seconded by Mayor Elmsley. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 3.3, Plan 2023-045, an application to amend the Township of Verulam zoning bylaw 6-87 at 17 Bellamy Road, Bob Cajun, the Hamilton Group. Jonathan, this is yours too.
Thank you, sir. Yes, here we have another zoning bylaw amendment application, this time pertaining to 17 Bellamy Road in the Township of Verulam. Again, this one is related to a severance, and this one is actually a condition of provisional consent. So in July of, I believe it was last year, there was an approved consent application and that proposed to sever a surplus farm dwelling on the subject lands, approximately 0.56 hectares of land, and the consolidation of approximately 26.91 hectares of retained agricultural land with an abutting agricultural lot. The property is currently zoned as general rural, A1 zone under the Township of Verulam zoning bylaw, and the proposed rezoning of the severed lot is from A1 to rural residential, RR zone. The severed lot, as described, is approximately 0.56 hectares, with the retained being 26.97. The benefiting lands are approximately 216.14 hectares. So for the total area, if you will, to be 243.65 hectares. Under the official plan, these lands are designated rural. In rural areas, rezoning to prohibit residential uses is applicable to lands that are non-abutting. In this case, these lands are certainly abutting, and staff believe that the severance meets the requirements for the rural designation. As the PPS goes, residential development, including lot creation, is supported provided that it's locally appropriate. Staff believe that the lot creation is locally appropriate and acknowledge that the retained lands would benefit adjacent property, and also it maintains existing agricultural lands and uses. Additionally, to sort of close the loop, the applicant has demonstrated that the lot creation complies with the minimum distance separation formula. As far as the growth plan is concerned, similar policies apply. Existing agricultural uses on the retained land will be maintained as they're consolidated with the benefiting lot. With the official plan as described, the lands are designated rural, and that dwellings that become surplus as a result of consolidation of abutting farm parcels may be severed, provided that, and that there are criteria, of course, as per section 16.3.5, which the application does satisfy. So for the zoning amendment, the retained lot will maintain the A1 zone with the severed lot to be RR. There are no zoning non-compliances that would result following the rezoning, should this application be approved. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the subject property, and notice was delivered to residents within approximately 500-meter radius, as well as agencies as part of the typical circulation process, and no concerns were received from the public, and no comments were received from agencies that would preclude the rezoning from moving forward. Ultimately, staff are recommending approval of this application and believe that it is good planning and conforming to the growth plan and the PPS, as well as the city's official plan. So staff are recommending that the bylaw, as attached, does get forwarded to council for approval, much like the application prior to this one. Any questions?
Thanks, Jonathan. Committee, any questions of Jonathan at this time? Okay, seeing none, is the applicant or agent on behalf of the applicant wishing to speak to the application? Okay, seeing none, is there anybody from the public wishing to speak to the application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Calling a third and final time, anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application? Seeing and hearing none, committee, after hearing everything, what is your recommendation to council? Mayor Elmsley?
As printed, I'll move it as printed.
Motion from Mayor Elmsley that report plan 2023-045, former Township of Verlem zoning bylaw 687 at 17 Bellamy Road be received. That the zoning bylaw respecting application D06-2023-013, substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to report plan 2023-045, be approved and adopted by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application. Seconder, Deputy Mayor Richardson, any discussion? All in favor? Carries. Thank you. That brings us to item 3.4, Plan 2023-044, an application to amend the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30 at 431 Meadowview Road, Omemee. Jonathan, you're on again.
Thank you, Chair. Here we have a zoning bylaw amendment application as described by the chair for 431 Meadowview Road. This is an amendment to the Township of Emily zoning bylaw. The subject lands are currently used for agricultural purposes and contain a single detached dwelling with an attached garage, a barn, and a horse shelter. Under the official plan, the subject site is designated as rural and also acknowledges there is a sand and gravel resource designation applied on here as well, with a significant woodland. The proposed rezoning pertains to the current zoning, pardon me, is agricultural A1 under the Emily zoning bylaw. The subject area is approximately 39.25 hectares. The applicant is looking to rezone a portion of the subject site, which will be the northern part of the site here, from A1 to rural residential zone to facilitate the conditions for a consent application. This application would fall under the provisions for conditions for the creation of a retirement lot for a bona fide farmer. So following an approval of this zoning bylaw amendment, a consent application would follow. In support of this application, the applicant provided a planning rationale report, a hydrogeological study, an aggregate impact study, a noise and vibration impact study, environmental impact study, and evidence of bona fide farmer status, as well as a written response from Species at Risk Ontario. Of course, there were MDS calculations and some plans, like the ones shown in front of you, to demonstrate the application. The subject site is designated rural and sand and gravel resource under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. So there are applicable policies under the PPS with regards to rural lands, rural areas, and mineral aggregate resources. Generally, the application does demonstrate conformity with the PPS, and including that residential development, including a lot creation that is locally appropriate. That is something that is supported by the PPS. In regards to the aggregate operations, so the documents that were provided in support of the application and pertaining to the resource use indicated that the distance from the aggregate use would not necessarily impact. There'd be no impacts, no effect realized on the use from the proposed severance. That being said, the aggregate impact study also determined that any development on the severed lot would not cause any compatibility issues with the existing aggregate operation. To note that full PPS conformity will be reviewed or determined following review, a full, more wholesome review of the technical materials. Regarding the growth plan, there are also policies pertaining to rural land uses and potential severances, and as well as the mineral aggregate resources. Staff feel that the development is compatible with the existing rural landscape, and that the proposed residential dwelling on the severance would be sustained by rural service levels, as indicated by the hydrogeology report. Pardon me. With regards to the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, staff are generally satisfied with the applicable criteria, given that the materials the materials provided in support of the application all demonstrate compatibility. The proposed rezoning, as described, is from A1 to RR1 zone. Staff feel that this zone is appropriate. This rezoning is appropriate to facilitate such a future consent. As far as consultation with this application, signage was posted on site, and notice was delivered to property owners within 500 meters of the subject site. There were a few comments that were received at the time of writing the report. I believe there were 3. And generally just asking for some clarification on the rezoning, how many lots would be proposed, etc. Pardon me. Agency review comments. This was circulated to the Kawartha Conservation Authority. Pardon me. They have no concerns with the proposed severance, and we are still waiting on some further work to be done with our some city staff on reviewing the bona fide farmer requirements. So the reason for referring this one back is to properly address some ongoing concerns with that piece of this puzzle, if you will. And we are therefore asking for this application to be referred back until we can firmly reach an answer or state a position on that piece of this application. So staff are asking for a referral back until such a time as that those comments are addressed and anything outstanding is concluded. So with that, I will turn it over for any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Deputy Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just have a quick question. We're at a point here where staff feel that its proposed amendment is appropriate to facilitate the creation of a retirement lot. There's a few outstanding comments, but at this time, I want to ask staff, do you feel like we have enough information to pass it today?
Respectfully, I'm going to defer to the director on this one. From what I understand, there are some conversations that are still required to sort of build out our a final recommendation.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Richardson. Certainly, I think from an overall review, we're satisfied that all of the technical aspects have been met, both from a practical and policy perspective. There was one comment, however, raised about the status of the farming operation and the status of the farmer itself, and so I've been trying to sort of discuss that with our economic development officer. However, we haven't had a chance to talk that through yet, but that is something that we want to do this week.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wondered where the neighbor is in this map that complained that he's got a new lot that he's going to be viewing. I just wondered where it is.
Through the chair, I would assume, I don't know if I have the address of, bear with me 1 second, I can pull it up. I'm just going to stop sharing for just a second here.
Hope so.
I think we're okay, Jonathan. I think Councillor Warren is okay.
Okay.
Any further questions of Jonathan at this time, or Director Hawley? I just have one, just further to Deputy Mayor Richardson. So if the only thing outstanding is the status of the farm and the farmer, is that something that it could be that the committee could pass and go to council? Provided that staff was satisfied or received the documents before the 26th?
We'll do our best to try to resolve this issue.
Okay, if there's no further questions for Jonathan, is the applicant owner or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wishing to speak to the application?
Yes, I'd like to speak, please.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Marnie Saunders. I'm a land use planner with DM Wills, and I'm here on behalf of the owner, Mrs. Lisa Hickey, who is also in attendance here with me for the meeting. Just like to thank staff for their time and comments on the staff report and on this application. We've reviewed staff's report and agree with the majority of the information that's provided therein. We feel that the comments that have been provided, with the exception of economic development, are supportive of the rezoning for the proposed consent, or with the intent and purpose of the future consent on the property. We have also submitted the submission material as outlined by Jonathan to support that application, and that material has also been reviewed and accepted by staff, with the exception of the noise study, which is currently under peer review by Jade Acoustics. We don't anticipate any negative comments coming back from that report, given the existing land uses and neighboring residential development across the street from the quarry. The comments that we did receive from economic development were pertaining to the criteria for what would qualify as a bona fide farmer. That criteria was provided by economic development staff prior to us submitting the application, and the material that we provided in response to that criteria was included in our planning justification report, as well as the submission material that was submitted with the rezoning application. Subsequent to that, we've received some additional comments from economic development that go beyond or request additional information beyond what was originally requested, which is included in Appendix D of our planning justification report. We're currently working with the Director of Planning and the economic development staff to provide some additional information in response to those comments. It's pretty straightforward comments, to be honest. It's whether or not the lands are being farmed, which they are, whether or not Mrs. Hickey lives on the property, which she does, how long she's farmed the lands for, and whether or not the retirement lot policies apply, given the recent and unexpected passing of her husband, who was originally the main farmer on that property, along with herself and several other members of her family. So as Richard Hawley has pointed out, or the Director of Planning has pointed out, we are working with staff to provide some of that additional information above and beyond what we've already provided and what was outlined in the criteria by economic development for that submission material, which, as I mentioned, is included in our planning justification report in Appendix D. If there's any additional information that staff require, we are more than happy to provide that prior to the next council or PAC meeting. So we would agree with council's kind of suggestion there put forth to possibly pass this application beyond all the submission material and time that's passed since Ms. Hickey initiated this process. She's still subject to go through the consent application. As you heard, there was several other applications that were heard on today's agenda, which were granted permission to go through that consent application and simply rezone the property as a condition of consent, which was not the opportunity here for Mrs. Hickey. So as I mentioned, she's completed all the due diligence and necessary submission material, which is all supportive of both the rezoning for the purpose of allowing the consent as a retirement farm lot. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that council or staff or possibly the public may have at this time. But otherwise, we'd just like to thank you for your time today and everyone's efforts on this project.
Thank you. Committee, any questions of the applicant at this time? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application? Any? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Going to call a third and final time. Anyone from the public, anyone online wishing to speak to the application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Committee, based on the comments provided, what is your recommendation to council? Deputy Mayor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, at this time I would like to move the report to council for approval.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Warren. Sorry, drew a blank there. Any further discussion? Mayor Elmsley?
So what if we don't have the comments back? Are you going to extract it at council and we'll deal with it then? Yeah? Okay.
Any further discussion? Everybody's good? You're good with the motion, Joel? Thank you. Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. This public meeting being held under the Planning Act is now adjourned. And we will move into item number 4, deputations, 4.1, Matthew Corey, relating to item 6.1 on the agenda. Mr. Corey, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, it's good to see you again. Yeah, we're here today. Very happy this is being brought forward by staff. Thank Director Hawley and all his staff for the hard work and bringing this forward. It's been a long time coming. The draft plan approval for these lands. We've had a chance to review the report. Obviously, support the recommendations in it, and also. Just note that there are some conditions in there and red lines that require additional work, but after discussing things with our team and looking at it, there's nothing in there that we don't think we can resolve with staff subsequent to draft plan approval and prior to final approval, as is normally the case with the additional engineering work and other work that we're going to have to do, and also on any other planning matters or anything else. So I believe it is. In my opinion, it's appropriate for committee to consider approving it as staff have recommended, and here to support it and obviously answer any questions if there are any of committee.
Thanks very much, Mr. Corey. First off, can I get a motion to receive the deputation? Member Willick, seconded by Mayor Elmsley. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Is there any questions of Mr. Corey at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Corey. That brings us to item 5, correspondence, which I believe we have none, Joel. Thank you. Item 6, regular and returned reports. 6.1, Plan 2023-048, draft plan of subdivision. 16T-22503 on Kawartha Lakes Road 36, Ops. Flato Community Lindsay, Inc. Director Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This matter is returning to committee for consideration today. There was a public meeting held for this application last fall, and it is coming back to you with a proposed 113 townhouse dwelling units, a number of blocks for future development, a parquet stormwater management facility, and a number of new municipal roads within this draft plan of subdivision. The lands are located on the east side of Lindsay. It's only a small portion of the subject property that will be developed. Primarily the parcel of land that has that small spit of frontage on CKL Road 46, as well as some of the frontage further down on 36 that will be developed. However, the vast majority of the property will not be developed at this time. As mentioned, there was a public meeting on October 12th last year, and the matter was referred back to staff for further review. At that time, there weren't a lot of comments received by the public. I think a lot of the comments are really sort of more information based. You know, how do you get access to the project? And there were some issues to be clarified. I think one of the things that sort of came up was regarding a walkway to IE Weldon from this project. So based on a number of discussions, there were and agency comments, we sat down with the developer and sort of worked through them. And one of the what they did is they came back with this revised draft plan here that we see before you. So one of the major changes is that the road into the development is coming in south of where it was before. So it's coming in its ultimate and final location, which I think is probably a good thing, as opposed to bringing the temporary road in on that northern small piece of access, which was originally proposed. So it sort of brings the subdivision down behind all of the lots that front on 36, and there is development now to the north side of Street A. So the proposal has grown from, I think, 85 units to 113 units to accommodate and to sort of bring that road down. There is also, you can see a small walkway that goes into the IE Weldon site, sort of halfway up. What's that street? Street B. So there is a walkway now that comes in from there. So this subdivision has direct access, or students from the subdivision have direct access into Weldon, which provides that interim connectivity at this time until the future lands are developed. You can see there was Block 25 was proposed as a parquet. However, through the review of this application by a number of agencies, it was determined that the city does not want to take the parquet in this location for a couple of reasons. One is it's a small piece of property, and we're going to wait for FLATO to address the parkland needs for this area on a comprehensive basis. So there's no need for us to take sort of small individual parquets. It's also very irregular shaped, and so from a programming perspective, it doesn't really make sense for the city to take it. And there's also going to be a servicing easement that goes through it. So if there were any, if there was any equipment or anything like that on it, might have to be dug up or have to be put elsewhere. Anyways, bottom line is the city is not going to take the parquet land itself. We're going to ask for Cashel Loop parkland. This plan shows, I think in a little bit more detail, the sort of the round circles. They're site triangles that we're going to take, daylighting triangles. They will be part of the road allowance. As well, that red rectangle is where the development will be serviced. So the water and sewer will be brought from across the street, across into the subdivision, and that service connection will be permanent. It won't be temporary until servicing is developed for the entire property. FLATO will be developing further to the east of this, east of this area. You can see a stormwater management block, and again, that's going to be sort of an ultimate block location. So from that perspective, that helps frame this into what the future land use patterns and development patterns will be. And the stormwater from the entire project will be directed that way. There were some concerns that the stormwater would be directed to CKL Road 36 and across the street into storm sewers that were across the street. That is not going to happen. It's all going to be contained on the site. So those are some of the major changes to the project that were submitted and reviewed, and from a staff perspective and agency perspective can be supported. Obviously, the project is subject to an MZO as amended. The units are permitted, as well as the lot frontages, and from if you want to call it a zoning perspective, the project does meet the standards of the minister's zoning order. The urban area does stop on the north, I guess the north side of Street C roughly, but because the entrance has been brought down to Street A, we have agreed to allowing some additional development south of the urban area, but at a staff level, we aren't going to be allowing any further development outside the urban area. The developer is also starting a neighborhood design plan for all of the lands that they own, and we've been starting to have some inputs on that into the terms of reference, and they're going to be retaining a number of consultants to work on that design plan. The city and all of the agencies, all the partner agencies, will be having input into that plan to sort of lay it out, where the roads go, where are the environmentally sensitive features, where are the different types of housing options, single, semis, towns, apartments. Also, where are the recreational facilities going? Where are the commercial facilities going? So that will all be determined through this neighborhood design exercise that FLATO will be undertaking. Obviously, from a policy perspective, because it has a minister's zoning order on it, it's not required to meet provincial or local policy. However, it does meet those policy objectives. It provides development within an urban area. It's fully serviced. It has looked at any environmental impacts for these areas here. There's a number of things that we're going to be doing through the implementation phase, such as our engineering group is going to be looking at LID on this, and so it does meet all of those provincial and local objectives. As I said, there were very few comments at the public meeting, and when we circulated it back out to, there was one interested party that we circulated this back out to, and they didn't have any further comments either. The revised plan was circulated back out to a number of agencies, and we have included all of their comments into the conditions of draft plan approval. So from my perspective, I would respectfully recommend that this be forwarded on to council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hawley. Questions? Councillor Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I understand why we don't want to take on the parkette, but is it possible just to remain as green space and not be developed as a park? Or are there other areas that can be green space? It's brought up at Environmental Advisory Committee a lot, as you know, looking at green space, because we don't like taking extra park land because there's a cost. So just a question. Thank you.
Through the chair to Member Warren, we'll have to take a look and see what that revised sort of block would look like and what FLATO wants to do with it. I don't know if they have any plans for it, but that's something that we'll have to sort of sit down and talk to them through the implementation of the draft plan.
Any further questions? Seeing and hearing none, committee, what are your wishes? Member O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move we receive the report and adopt the recommendations of draft plan subdivision 16T 22503 on County Road 36, Township Ops, Flato Community, Lindsay Inc. D052022-003, an application to permit residential plan of subdivision consisting of 20 blocks for 113 townhouse dwelling units, 3 blocks for further development. Should I take the parkette out? There's this in the recommendations. Should I take that out?
No, it's okay. You can leave that in.
Okay.
We'll deal with it administratively.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me?
It's not reading the recommendation.
Oh, I'm just reading the original one. Okay.
Here, it's right here.
Here, I'll handle this for you. That report, Member O'Reilly is moving that report plan 2023-048, draft plan of subdivision 16T-22503 on Kawartha Lakes Road 36, Township of Ops, Flato Community, Lindsay Inc. be received, that the draft plan of subdivision 16T-22503 is shown in Appendix B, together with the conditions substantially in the form attached as Appendix C, and red line revisions attached as Appendix D to Report Plan 2023-048 be referred to Council for approval and adoption, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute any documents required by the approval of this application. Seconder, please. Member Willick, any further discussion? Member O'Reilly?
I'll just have a quick, I think it's great that we're going to get this underway. We know there's a housing shortage and there's going to be 113 townhouse dwelling units, so I think that's a very positive story.
Any further discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? And that carries. Okay. No, the public meeting is done. This is returned in regular reports. So at this stage, the meeting has come to a conclusion. Could I have a motion for adjournment? Deputy Mayor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Warren. All in favor? That carries.